Okay, here I am. So is it okay? You can see the screen, I'm assuming. Great. Okay, so yes, thanks so much, Camelia, for that nice introduction. As was mentioned, my name is Jennifer Brandsberg-Engelmann, and I have been teaching for more than 25 years in the social sciences in international schools mainly, and I'm the project lead and lead author for this work. My background was mainly in teaching economics in the international baccalaureate system for most of the time that I've been a teacher, but in my later years, I also took up teaching of business management and environmental systems and societies. And I've developed a change-making curriculum also for students and done quite a bit of work on change-making with students. And my colleague, Michelle Blanchett, who is mainly taking the lead on community building work, and she also provides advice on strategy and kind of all the sort of sort of academic pieces of the work. She has been a great help in terms of the outreach that's been involved, and you can see from her few words about her on this slide. She's also got a background in futures literacy, economics, and civic engagement and changemaker skills. So the two of us together are tackling this ambitious project. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is give you a brief overview for about 20 to 25 minutes about the origin of this project, why we're taking it on, what exactly we're building, and how we're going about getting it into schools and also bringing about systems change. So first of all, on the origin, back in 2022, I was approached by two student groups in the UK, Students Organizing for Sustainability and Teach the Future. These two student organizations were developing a project that they called Track Changes. And the purpose of this project was to have academics and teachers work together to rewrite all of the English national curriculum documents to include sustainability. And the thinking behind this project was that at some point there would be a change in government, and that government might be likely to make revisions to the national curriculum. And they wanted to make sure that these ideas about embedding sustainability in the curriculum were the ones that were lying around and easy to pick up and implement. So I was approached to work on economics as a teacher, but economics curricula are not so easy to make minor changes to in order to have them be fit for the 21st century. They really need a complete rethinking and redevelopment. So in order to do this, I asked Oxford economist and author of Donut Economics, Kate Raworth, whether she would help me, and she agreed. And she brought in a few more academics, and I brought in a few more teachers, and then together we worked on revising the English national curriculum for economics. We published that syllabus in May 2023, so about a year and a half ago. And since that time, I've been working to try to bring this work to life in a way that makes it possible for teachers to already start teaching regenerative economics in schools, regardless of whether they have a mandated syllabus from the government or not. So since then, we've been building lots of partnerships. You can see the slide shows you some of the people that we're working with in various contexts, both on the organizational level there at the top, but also a wide number of individuals, mainly who are volunteers on this project, who are helping us in a wide variety of ways, everything from expert help on the content to proofreading and editing to giving us feedback on the accessibility on the content. There are students among the names there who've been helping us as well. And that list is growing all the time. So we're building quite a large community now of people who are interested in this work. We've got really hundreds of people around the world now who are regularly engaged with this project and helping us implement it. So we come to the question about why, and I don't know if you have an economics background or not, how many of you here, but it's always worthwhile to spend a little bit of time exploring what's wrong with these courses, because it's not obvious to most people. It's not even obvious to many economics teachers what might be wrong with their courses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into just one problem with these courses. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to zoom out a little bit and talk about the kind of big picture problem with these courses, and then move on to tell you what we're doing about it. So this slide shows you a Greenpeace campaign from the late summer of 2023. You can see this is actually in front of Shell's headquarters. And you see here on the billboard in the back here, a large picture of the fires that occurred in Greece in summer of last year. These are the largest wildfires in European history. And you've got Shell's logo there, and then the slogan, "Our profit, your loss." Now, it's quite a clever campaign to call attention to the problems in the fossil fuel industry. But I want to give you a little bit of context with this of what the complaint is against Shell. So Shell in the year 2022 recorded a profit of 40 billion, which is just a stunning amount of money for a company. It was a record profit for Shell. It was more than twice its previous record. And you are probably well aware of the context behind that, the geopolitical context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the geopolitical uncertainty that drove energy prices very high. So at a time when, of course, many people around the world experience energy poverty, but even in very wealthy countries, we had an increasing number of people experiencing energy poverty. Shell was recording record profits. The next year, 2023, Shell recorded a profit of 28 billion, so not quite as high, but still its second highest profit ever, and still a stunning amount of money for a company to be earning in profit. And you might think, given the importance of fossil fuel companies to the energy transition that we need, already have long ago needed, but will continue to need in the future, you might think that a company so important like this would take those windfall profits and really double down on the energy transition, knowing what we're facing in the future. But no, Shell took a good portion of that money and raised its dividend to shareholders, and then started rolling back its promises on CO2 emissions cuts. And it's not the only one. I'm picking on Shell here in the slide because I've got this nice picture of the Greenpeace campaign. But we've seen this from other companies as well. And Shell has been very brazen it's been very open about its goals to try to maximize profits for shareholders. And when I look at this campaign, when I think about what's happening with these profits, really, you must, and I always ask, where does this idea come from? Where do these companies believe, how can they possibly believe that this is okay, that this behavior is correct? And the problem is that the people sitting in the heads of these companies, the people running these companies, many people in government, in fact, have actually been taught this in their economics and business management courses, because profit maximization actually lies at the heart. It's a fundamental assumption in almost every single economic model that students learn in secondary schools and beyond in the bachelor's level of university. As a teacher, I taught these courses for many years. I probably had students identifying on a diagram the profit maximizing point in a cost curve diagram 100 times before they took an exam, right? It's really drilled into their heads. Even if we acknowledge briefly that there might be other goals of firms, this one about profit maximization really stands out. And we now have legal systems actually that put huge pressure on firms as well to profit maximize, that people who work for firms can actually get into trouble if they don't aim to profit maximize. So our legal systems in many cases have been set up around this too. So this goal of profit maximization is leading to what we call extractive behavior. And you might hear this occasionally in the news. It's value extraction from stakeholders. And this profit maximization and the economics courses and business courses that teach it are really supporting the degenerative economies that we have. And what I mean by that is that the way our economy behaves is undermining social and ecological systems. It's creating inequality. We're seeing more and more social division. Social cohesion is falling apart. so that these economies are undermining both ecological systems and social systems and undermining civil society. And that's why I'm here today. You might think it was a funny thing to talk about regenerative economics in the context of civics education, but these two things are really intimately tied with one another. And I want to just pick apart, again, just in the interest of sort of diving a little bit deep into this one problem among many in these courses. I want to look at how this profit maximization actually undermines these systems. So, at its most basic level, when we talk about profit maximization, we're talking about trying to increase revenues for the firms as much as possible and lower costs as much as possible. So if we take the revenue side, what that means is that firms, businesses, in these economies, in market economies, are trying to gain as much market power as they possibly can. Yeah, we see this all the time. And the reason they do that is because when you have market power as a business, you're able to raise your prices and therefore raise your revenues by quite a lot. And where does this money come from? This money for these increased profits ultimately comes out of the pockets of households. And this is the connection that I was making before between Shell's profits and the energy poverty experienced by many people, right? This money doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somebody and it comes from households. Now, on the cost side, again, to maximize profits, we want to get those costs down as much as possible. And this is in our economics and business courses. Cost efficiency is always talked about as this really positive thing, something that you always want as a firm. Lower your costs as much as possible. You get efficient, right? But again, this has an impact on a wider range of stakeholders. So when firms aim to lower their costs, what that means is they lower wages for workers. They reduce benefits for workers. They try to get workers on temporary contracts so that they can hire and fire people at will. With suppliers, it means putting pressure on the prices that you pay suppliers for all the resources that you use, or you use short-term contracts, again, so you can switch between suppliers and make them compete with one another for your business. Or, as a powerful firm, you're probably able to hire accountants and tax experts who are able to minimize your tax liabilities all over the world so that you're not paying an appropriate amount of tax to the governments that then use that money to sponsor social welfare and other state obligations. Or you're working to take as many resources as you possibly can from nature for free and dump as much waste as possible back into the environment. So this is what it means when we pick apart what it means to lower your costs. It's not just about becoming better at what you're doing. Yeah, it can be that, but very often it's about all the ways that you can extract value and put pressure on other stakeholders in the network in which you operate. And the consequences of that are really quite severe on both these sides of the raising prices and lowering costs. We're getting more and more economic inequality. We're seeing more economic insecurity for people around the world. We're seeing higher state budget deficits and therefore social welfare programs cut and ecological degradation as a result of this. So this profit maximization assumption that's behind the models in the courses we teach then finds its way out into the real economy and causes an enormous amount of harm. Now, this isn't just my opinion. We've got a lot of economists shouting about this problem right now. One of the most high profile who has come out to talk about this is Angus Deaton. He is a Nobel Prize winning economist. And in the International Monetary Fund's newsletter, and the International Monetary Fund is not a left-wing and a left-wing organization, but they published a newsletter back in the spring about with some new economic thinking in it. And Angus Deaton came out with this amazing mea culpa, called Rethinking My Economics. And one of the lines in there really struck me. He said, when efficiency comes with upward wealth distribution, and you saw that in the diagram that I was just showing you, right? Economists' recommendations frequently become little more than a license for plunder, right? So here you have not a left-wing, economist, not a left-wing publication, but really coming out in the open and saying this profit maximization goal that results in this market power and raising prices and lowering costs of production, again, using market power, this is really problematic and has to be reassessed. So that was kind of like a little deep dive into this one problem. But if I'm going to zoom out again to look at the big picture of these courses, the main issue or the main problem where we have these courses is that they focus far too much on markets as a provisioning institution. They essentially draw a systems boundary around markets and treat anything else, non-market activity, as sort of external and not worth much consideration. So you see within that narrow focus of markets, we get then an excessive focus on price as a measure of value. We get some really terrible assumptions about human behavior and human nature, that we're all selfish, utility maximizing human beings who have endless needs and wants, or just endlessly greedy. And as a result of that, then we need endless, aimless economic growth to satisfy those endless wants. And we see very little attention given to values and ethics. In fact, there's a really stark rejection of that in these courses, even though this focus on profit maximization has its own value logic, if you will, right? It's proposing a set of values without actually calling them that. And then here, outside of the system's boundary around markets, we see the state, which is often treated as though it's not a natural part of the economy, but this kind of alien entity that is constantly intervening in the economy, right? We use this word in English, intervention, state intervention, or for example, when states have taxes, we use this word imposing. The states impose a tax on individuals or businesses, right? So we've got quite a lot of negative language around states. Society and the environment are treated as externalities. We actually use that word externality, which just highlights how solid this systems boundary is intellectually that we've drawn around markets. And then over on the left-hand side of this diagram, you can see two items. You can barely see them, and that's because they're not really discussed at all. And one of them is all the unpaid household care and domestic work that goes on in the economy, which is not addressed at all in these courses. And yet, if you measured it in monetary terms, it would be larger than the largest industries that a country has. And then you've got the commons, which is all of the community, self-organized community work that people do in their localities and beyond, in order to meet their needs outside of these market or state systems. And these are not addressed, or if commons is addressed, we always talk about the tragedy of the commons in these courses, right? That because we talk about with open access and unmanaged resources, how they can be overexploited. So this is kind of like the big picture problem. I focused in on this one profit maximization issue, but there are many kind of associated problems with these courses. So then that brings me to the what. What are we trying to do about this? How have we kind of flipped the narrative in order to develop something different that can be taught to students? So this is the website for Regenerative Economics, which I'll also give you at the end of this. Basically, and I'm going to focus first on the kind of product that we're creating, if you will, and that's a book. We've got a syllabus, and we're working on a detailed set of specifications also for students and teachers, but we're also writing a book. And this book is for that syllabus, and it's 2 years worth of teaching material. So it's a massive piece of work, very, very detailed, very well researched, and written for kids, for anywhere from the age of 14 to sort of 19 is the target age group that we're working with. And we're writing a book then that teachers and students can use with activities, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like in a few minutes. And that's kind of like the core product that we're producing, but there's more to the project than just this product. But I first want to talk about exactly what this course looks like and how it differs from what I just showed you. So the structure that we're using for this course is based on the embedded economy model. So this model appears in the book Donut Economics. It's actually not the Donut Economics model, that is something else. But this model here that you're looking at appears very early on in the book. And it basically kind of ties together a lot of different schools of thought of economics. So whereas current economics courses are focused mainly on what's called the neoclassical or neoliberal schools of thought in economics, this one brings together many different schools of thought. And what you see here is that the market is still there. Markets are obviously hugely powerful provisioning institutions, and they're still there in this course. And we also have the state. But you can see that the structure then of this course is more complex and it's more systems oriented. And I'm going to break this down for you now. First of all, focusing on the elements of the economy, if you will. In this course that we're developing, we don't just talk about markets and state, but we've added two more provisioning institutions. So the household, all of the unpaid care and domestic work, and the commons, which is the self-organized communities that manage shared resources. And these are given roughly equal weight in the course, right? So it's not that we have most of the focus on markets and then a little bit here and there on these other elements, but they are really given equal topical weight in the course. And this is hugely important, not only just so that we understand how important the household and the commons are, but moving forward, as we are going to be facing more ecological and social disruptions, as you know, in the coming decades, we need a strong, healthy, diversified economy. And by focusing so much on markets and state as well, but you know, even businesses are often kind of trying to like discredit the state in a way, even as they rely on it a lot. And we have to, just like diverse ecosystems, our economy needs diverse ways of meeting human needs with diverse mechanisms and diverse structures. We need to recognize how important the household is and all that unpaid care and domestic work. And we need to figure out how both market, state, and the commons can support households better to strengthen them. And we also need to recognize and support commoning. We need to find other ways besides just markets and state to meet human needs, because markets and the state are often disrupted. Yeah, we saw that with the pandemic. And, you know, you can probably remember how important your household was during the pandemic, or your community, and how people came together to support one another when there were market disruptions or when the state failed to meet people's needs, right? And so we have to, moving forward, knowing that we're going to have a lot of disruption in the future, we have to strengthen these two other institutions. And our courses, we have to recognize them and we have to learn about them, and students need to practice engaging with those institutions. So then zooming out from the economy is embedded in society. So the course that we're creating, as we're talking about markets, household, state, and the commons, we're letting society kind of infuse and social elements infuse the course. So we don't shy away from talking about values. Power is a concept that runs right the way through the course, is always there in every single topic. History, culture, and social norms, politics, law, these things are really kind of infused throughout the curriculum. And then zooming out again to look at the economy and society is actually embedded in Earth systems. So again, paying attention to material resources and energy resources that are flowing through our economy and then leaving in terms of waste heat and waste matter. These things are important to include in an economics course, and mainstream courses don't do that at the moment. So you can see in this slide, and this is just kind of like a sort of big picture overview of what the course looks like in the different topics, but I broke down topic 1 so that you can see how this embedded economy model actually plays out in the structure of the course. So at the very beginning, after a brief introduction to what the economy is, you see that the very next topic is actually ecology in the economy. So students actually learn some basics about ecology before they move on to do anything else, because we have to recognize our dependency on energy and matter from nature. We have to understand our dependence on all of the ecological processes, interactions in ecosystems, biogeochemical cycles, etc. So the course is transdisciplinary in a way, because right at the start, you're diving into some ecology and learning basic ecology. And then you can see there's some time spent on society, including learning about diverse ways of thinking about human nature, values in the economy, human needs, provisioning systems, etc., and the role of care, which is central to the course as well. And then there's a bit of an overview on what regenerative economies are as a part of this introduction. And then you can see these 4 provisioning systems form the next 4 topics on households, markets, commons, and state. And we put households first for a reason. And that's because it is the most important for human well-being, is how households function. And so we started, and they're ignored completely in courses. So we really wanted to make this point about putting them first. And then you can see markets, money and finance and international exchanges are topics 6 and 7. And those are they look like typical topics that you would find in an economics course, but we're looking at those topics through a regenerative lens. So, thinking about money and finance in service to human and ecological well-being, not societies and human beings in service to finance, which is what we experience with our current courses and our life and our economies at the moment. Now, what I'd like to do just very briefly is just to show you one section of the textbook, because they're all organized the same way, just to show you what this resource looks like. And so I'm going to open up the book to our latest topic. We've only published 3 of the 7 topics, but we're ongoing. We're publishing more and more. So the 4th one will be done in November. And then the final 3 will be done between the beginning of the year and next year and June. So we anticipate having the entire resource done by the early summer. Right, so I'm just going to open up this one here. I'm going to open up the one about law and market. So again, just to make the point, and you won't see this in a mainstream course being addressed, law and markets. And so this kind of social element of law and how markets are dependent on law, and how laws can also be used to increase market power. But this is what the resource looks like. So at the start of every section, there is some helpful prior learning. These are links to other areas of the textbook that are related or useful. And then you have learning objectives. And these objectives are part of the big detailed specification that we're producing related to the syllabus. So that's at the start. Each section always starts with an interesting story. In this case, it's about the indigenous Maya community in Belize and the fight that they had to try to prevent the government from doing oil exploration on Mayan lands. So after the kind of short hook, if you will, at the start of the story, then you've got the kind of main textual sort of knowledge input. So for example, here, what are laws and why do markets need them? What are property rights? How have property rights reinforced power and inequality in society? What is legal personhood and how can it reinforce power and inequality? And then, so that's the main text input. And then at the end of every section, you've got at least 1, but oftentimes 3 or 4 activities to choose from. And we have deliberately made these activities things that can be done in 1 class period, like 40 minutes. So we're being very practical about this and not trying to do things that are completely beyond the scope of what teachers and students are able to do in their school context. But we're creating things that are manageable for the timeframes that people have. So here we've got 2 activities. One of them is about a news story about Italian beaches, how there has been a battle recently over the privatization of beaches and people wanting to reclaim that public land for common use rather than them being privatized. You have then also in every section 5 checking for understanding questions. These are auto-marked. The students actually asked for this because they wanted a quick way to be able to test their understanding. We have some links to further exploration. So if students are really interested in this topic, we've provided them some additional links to things that they can explore, along with an assessment, a quick assessment of the difficulty level. So usually there is a mixture of some easy, sort of medium and hard or high level difficulty links. The sources that we use to write the text, and then a list of terminology, including a link to interactive flashcards and games with the terminology for each section. Right, so that's, and then there's a feedback button at the end as well, where people can tell us if we made a mistake or have a typo or something like that that we can fix. Yeah, so that's what the resource looks like. And as I mentioned, 3 of the 7 topics have been finished so far, and we're publishing them as we go so that teachers can already start using them. Right, so that brings me to the final piece, which is a bit shorter, this section, which is about the how. So how are we going about getting this into schools? And then how are we trying to get bigger systems change with this project? So this is just a very simple graphic about that kind of explains what we're trying to do. So the ultimate goal, my dream, best case scenario, is that we can get large national and international institutions to change the economics curricula, right? Because right now what teachers are doing is trying to grab onto little bits and pieces, and they're working really hard to get it into their courses. But my goal is to get the syllabus changed that they have to work with. And I'm going to talk to you about the possibilities of that in a few minutes on the next slide, because I'm quite excited about what's going on right now. But we're trying to approach it thinking systematically from sort of 2 directions. This book that we're writing, the syllabus, the detailed specifications in the book, the purpose of that, one of the purposes of it, is to give these institutions a totally new alternative view about how you can teach economics, so that they have more confidence to drop what they're doing now and move in a new direction, right? Because until now, you might have people saying, oh, you know, this way of doing things or that way of doing things is not good, but there was not a clear view on what you could do instead. And that's what we're trying to provide. So that's one thing, but we're also doing some direct lobbying of these institutions. So for example, I'm working right now with Oxfam and Rethinking Economics and the Donut Economics Action Lab and a number of other organizations. We're creating an open letter to the curriculum authorities in England right now, because they are reviewing the national curriculum. We're creating an open letter that we're going to get lots of economists to sign in order to call for this change, right? So we're doing that direct lobbying, and we're showing them the new way to the future. But that's not all. We are also then working with teachers and students to help them already get this material into their courses. And we've developed the material to be modular, so they can cherry pick little pieces of this to embed in their courses. That's really, really important. And the grant that we got from the Civic Innovation Fund to do this work is enabling us. This is kind of the piece that they're helping us with, because we're in contact with hundreds of teachers, and lots of people are starting to use this, but we don't have a clear view on exactly what they're doing. And we're trying to kind of gain more evidence that we can then use to build narratives and stories around it to help provide the social proof for institutions. So the grant that we got for the Civic Innovation Fund is helping us work more closely with 5 teachers and give them more support to help them implement the work, and then to pull out evidence that we can then use to kind of craft case studies and provide sort of the stories that we need around this in order to, again, influence those institutions to change their curricula. And aside from that little piece, it's all about sort of working at the grassroots level to provide that social proof and get those teachers as well to start putting pressure on the institutions that they work with to get those social tipping points. So that's kind of like the big picture how model. And what's really exciting, for me anyway, about this situation is that we have, you might be familiar with this, but at the secondary school level, curricula where you have a national curriculum or even a regional curriculum, oftentimes it's not revised except maybe once 8, 9, 10 years, right? It doesn't happen very often. So your window of opportunity to get these systems to change is small. But what's really cool right now is that we have kind of like a super cycle of curriculum revision for economics. The International Baccalaureate is revising their program. That's an international program with something like 8,000 or 9,000 schools worldwide. Cambridge International is also looking at theirs. That's even bigger international program. I think they have 10,000 schools worldwide. The Netherlands has just started revising their curriculum. Just started looking to revise their economics curriculum, and England is doing a review of the entire national curriculum, which would include economics. So, and what's interesting, these are usually multi-year processes, but the first year is the most important because that's where it's decided what resources they're going to use, who's going to be involved, how radical they're going to be, etc. So the next 12 months or so are really, 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 really important for this work. So I'm writing furiously to create the work, and we're trying to reach as many teachers as we can, and we're lobbying as hard as we can, because I also think if they all know that they're doing this at the same time, if they move in that direction together, they can also feel more secure about taking a more radical new approach to economics. So yeah, so it's quite an interesting moment for the work, and very exciting. Yeah, so that's the website. If you're interested in going there and seeing what we've put together and passing it along to people that you know, I would really appreciate it. And on the website, people can make appointments with me as well. Like, so if there's a teacher out there or somebody who wants to chat and thinks that they'd like to implement it and needs some help or guidance, I'm always happy to talk to people about doing that. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you.